I just came up from.
Please help me give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Just what I like. Attention. Center. Hi, I'm Cynde, and I am a grateful alcoholic. Okay, I'm going to tell you how it was for me. See, I started, I was young. I was really young when I first took my first drink. I remember all my uncles sitting around, and I took my first sip, and I liked it. So as it progressed, I got older, and my oldest brother, we would take the tequila and pour it, and then we'd fill the rest up with water, so my parents wouldn't know, right? So that was just, I didn't know then, but that was just the beginning. And then I remember having a friend that lived across the street, and we got into fainting ourselves. We'd breathe real deep, and then we'd hold this, and we'd fall down. You know, and I liked it. I really did. I liked it. And I wanted more. And I'm the alcoholic that likes to live dangerously. I'm the one that wants to try it first. I want to do it again. That's just the way I am. You know, I'll try everything first, and I like it. And I can go to any group and fit in. You know, I have no problem fitting in. And when it's drinking and we're using drugs, it's easy. It's real easy. But I can tell you the insanity in my mind is always going, and it never turns off. And it always told me that it's okay to drink and to use. It's okay. You know, so that's how I thought, because I don't know any other way. I didn't know. So it progressed, and I came from a family that always yelling. There's always yelling. My dad was always yelling. Yelling, plates breaking, and, you know, laying in bed, and we were crying, you know, because we knew it wasn't normal, me and my brothers. We knew, but there was nothing that we could do because we were little. And so when I used to drink and use drugs, I would stuff it, so I didn't have to feel that. And I just kept going. I kept progressing. I would, before I went somewhere, I would drink. If I went out, I was drinking. I remember getting pulled over, and I remember somebody borrowed my car and gave my name. And I didn't have tags, so I had to go to jail. I had to go to jail because I had a warrant on me because they never went to court to fix it. And my name was spelled wrong and my birth date. So that went on. And the last time I was drinking, and I had my son with me. And I remember calling home to see if it was okay to come home. You know, and I'm a runner. I like to go out and I don't come back. I binge, and I won't come back for 2 or 3 days. I don't want to call. I don't want to hear the guilt. Come home, where are you? I don't want to. And sometimes my son was with me. And when I get drunk and use, I don't care. You know, there was times I didn't change him. I didn't care. And he would be crying, and I couldn't calm him down. You know, I couldn't calm him down. And I remember coming home, and my brother called the sheriff on me. And CPS got involved, so my son was taken away from me, and luckily he was with my mother. So my mother took care of him, and they'd come and do their visits. So I didn't know how to get help. Already I knew at the point it wasn't working for me anymore. I was unhappy. I didn't know where to go. So I called my union rep from the store, and he helped me. He said, okay, let's do this, and I went into a 30-day program. So I went into the 30-day program, and I was seeing people that I used to work with coming in, and we go, hey, what are you doing here? And start laughing, and I'm not taking it seriously. And I would sit there, and it was no big deal because, you know what, I'm not like you guys, but I have to do it just to get everybody off my back. You know, I just have to do it. And then when I started coming in the rooms, I'd sit in the back, and I was thinking about who I can find over here in the meeting that would go drink with me and use. I wasn't paying attention because I wasn't like you guys. You know, I just wasn't. I couldn't relate. I was brand new. I couldn't relate to everybody laughing and smiling because I was angry when I came. I was very angry. So I went back out. And every time I went back out, it got worse. But I wasn't done. I just was not done. I thought, you know what, maybe I could do it differently. And I didn't. I ended up places that I shouldn't even be. Very dangerous places with very dangerous people. So I came back in, and I've been through so many treatments. I've been to outpatient. I think I knew all the counselors. I went into the psych ward. They had a phone right there by me, so I'd be calling my dealer. You know what I mean? And it's like, really? They put a phone right there? So I came out again. I had to go back into a 6-month program. And that helped me, but it was hard because the girls there, it was really hard. It was hardcore. It was really hard. And I remember getting into a fight with one, and we both left, but then they called me back to come in, and so I finished, and it was really hard. But it was easy because I had structure. We had meetings, and every time they told us what to do. And so I was good with that. But before that, I met a man in AA. So I found out what 13-step was. So I really wanted to 13-step him, and I asked him for his number, right? And that's Bob. Later on, he became my husband. So every time I'd go back out, he was looking for me. And he was calling, and he didn't know where I was. And I just wasn't ready. I was not ready. And he didn't know where I was. And I remember one time I was on the west side, and I was sitting on the curb. And he picked me up because I called him. And he went and picked me up. And I hadn't taken a shower maybe 2-3 days. My son, I think, was with my parents or somebody, because there was times that I wouldn't even go pick him up because I'd forget. He'd be in daycare and I'd forget. And I was just too damn high to drive. So I remember him always looking for me. And he used to encourage me. And he'd always tell me, let God in. Let him in you. I didn't know how to let God in. I did not. And then I came, and then I started seeing people real happy. And then I went back out again, and this time I remember my friend and her husband pulled me out of a house because I was so out of it. They pulled me out. That was a step 12. You know what I mean? They helped me. They were carrying me, the alcoholic, the drug addict. They were carrying me. They took me out, and I went to the hospital. And then I came back in, and I went to another meeting, and I just said, you know what, I'm powerless. All the insanity that I was doing, it wasn't fun anymore. It was just, and every time I went, I was used and I was abused. It was hard. And I remember meeting Bob, and he would treat me like I'd never been treated in my life. He loved me. It's okay. And then I would sabotage it because it was too much for me. I could not handle a man being nice to me, giving me flowers, giving me cards, just being nice to me. I just never had that. I didn't have that from my father, my brothers. So I always went for relationships that were very destructive to me. And it made me feel okay. Or I had to be taking care of another man, financially or, and that's all I had was we would just drink, find drugs, and that's all the people I hung around with. Because that's all we had in common. And that's what my mind would tell me. That's what we're going to do, Cynde, and hang out with guys and girls just getting out of prison. And, I liked that. That was cool. And I was always around drugs. And if I had the money, I'd spend my check. Sometimes I'd spend $400 or $500 back then. And it was no problem. So I'd come home and I wouldn't have money to buy him diapers or food. I was okay. And then I'd call and I'd feel the guilt that the family would give me. So, you know what? Screw it. And I'd go back out. And when I go back, and when I found out I was pregnant, I was drinking while I was pregnant because I couldn't stop. And I had to get tested. And I knew when I'd get tested how many days to stop prior to being tested. So it's like I worked the system. And another time I was driving, and I don't know what happened, but the cops pulled me over. And they said, you know what? Don't lie to me. I'm going to search your car, and if you have something, you're going to go. And I had drugs in my trunk. So I didn't lie. I says, yeah, I am high. And she told me to pull over. First she said, how did it happen? And I said, well, I was in a treatment, and it was very hard for me because my mind always told me it was okay. My mind, and when I take the first drink, then I said, well, screw it. So I kept going because then the craving started. So she told me to pull over and walk. So I did a lot of walking around, not knowing where to go and just out of it. And when she left, I came back and I drove my car. And I found somebody else that went with me in the program, and we went out and we started using again. And I remember Bob going to academy to be, I was in the Army, and he went there to be, what was it? A cadet, or I forgot. And anyway, I called him, and because I had went back out, and I called, what's that, people that help you when a tragic happens? Red Cross. And I told them, the Red Cross, that I needed to talk to Bob because I was raped. I told him I was raped. This way that he can come and he could help me and come home. And he came home. He came home. And that's how my insanity and my drinking, how it takes me. I have to lie and I cheat and I manipulate people. I'll do whatever I have to do to make me okay. So, I don't have to look at myself. So when I came back, I saw it differently, AA. I saw the people laughing. There was no anger in them. I had friends that would take me and pick me up from home and bring me to a meeting and tell me, Cynde, it's going to be okay. And then I'd see all the laughter, and I couldn't understand. Why are they laughing? Why are they laughing and having a good time? So I wanted that. And so at that time I said, I'm powerless. I'm tired of drinking and I'm tired of using drugs. But how do I change? How do I change? So, I got on my knees and I said, God, help me. I don't like this. Because I knew if I went back out, I wasn't going to come back. They're going to find me dead, or, I just wasn't going to come back. And I had a son at that time too. And he didn't even bring me back. You know what I mean? I wasn't strong enough to even care about him. So when I came in, I started doing what they told me to do. Because I like to do what I like to do. But every time I did something, it wasn't right. I had to think differently. I had to learn how to think differently, how to act. And it's always change, change, change. And every time I did it my way, I would always backslide and go reverse. So I got a sponsor and I started listening to her. She told me what to do, and it was very hard. And at that time, too, when I was going through that, I had a hard time with my brothers, yelling at me, screaming at me, calling me all kinds of names. I remember my older brother taking my son and slapping me, because I was the only girl, so how could you? How could you do that? What's the matter with you? I don't understand. Well, they don't understand because they're not like me. They're not an alcoholic. So when I was in the program, in order for my parents to see me, they had to go to classes. To support me. They had to go to classes to learn why I was the way I was. Then they'd get visits. And every time they wanted to go visit me, they had to go to classes. And at this time, too, Bob and I were getting more involved. And he'd have to go to the classes, too, to see me. And I remember he'd pick up my son and he'd take my son to go visit me. So I got to the point where he couldn't fix me. He couldn't help me because I couldn't help myself. So we ended up splitting up because he had to move on and I wasn't ready to move on with him. And I didn't want to bring him up or I didn't want to bring him down. So we had to do our own thing. And I used to go church hopping. Because I figured, I'll find God. I knew about a God, and then I was mad at him. And how could you do that? But then I realized he didn't do it to me. I did it to myself. He was always there, but I never surrendered. I never fully surrendered and say I am powerless. My life is unmanageable. And it was. It really was. So I started working my steps, and I started doing the suggestions they told me. I'd get down on my knees, and then they told me I was trying too hard. I was doing it too hard to get God in my life and feel the Spirit. And I remember going to a Pentecostal church and wearing the dresses, and I'd see them running around, so I'd run around with them in circles, hoping, I'd get Jesus in me, right? But it didn't work, It just didn't work. That wasn't me. And then I'd go to another church. just to find God. And I remember them telling me, you will find God, just accept him and ask him to come in your life, and he did. He finally did come in my life. He changed me. And the big word for me is change. Change and surrender. Because every time, everything I do, it's always a change. And I have so many character defects. And every time through my sobriety, it would come up. I had to learn how to humble myself and put other people first. I had to learn to carry the other alcoholic. I had to learn that I can't help everybody. All I can do is share my experience and my strength and where I am. I am sober now. I have 22 years. And I could tell the newcomers, and it wasn't easy. It's not easy. For me, it's not easy to stay sober when I first came in. It's very hard. Very hard. Very hard to look back and look what I did. But you know what? Look where I'm at now. I'm sober. I'm happy. I'm happily married to another alcoholic. My friends came. My cousin came to support me. All of you guys are supporting me. I get involved now. It feels good. It just feels to come in, and I'm always laughing. Sometimes I just get that giggle in me, and I can't stop, so I got to excuse myself and go to the bathroom and just laugh. I like to look in the mirror and laugh, because I used to look in the mirror and cry. I see myself crying. Wiping mascara. I had to change the way I talked. I had to change the way I dressed. I had to change everything. My music. I changed the movies I used to watch, because if it had to do with drugs, sex, and beer, my mind would start saying, let's go back out. You can do it again. But I knew I couldn't, because I knew where it would take me, and I'd hit a bottom. And when I got into recovery and I'd hit meetings, I used to go to the West Side meetings, because then I thought I'd fit in, because they had hit very low bottoms, and I couldn't go to the other side where they used to dress up really nice, and because I didn't fit in. I thought I wasn't good enough. They're not going to like me if they know where I was and who I am. I always thought it in my head. You're not going to like me. And if you like me, you're going to like the bad and you're going to like the good. To know me is, I have two sides. And I always thought I was bipolar. Because I can get very angry, but then I can get very happy. And I can go off. And I have to pause and I have to think. And I have to, say, God, help me. Help me. Thank you for shaking your head. And but it's just, life's beautiful today, and I still have problems, but you know what, I don't drink, and that's the furthest thing from my mind, because I know where it's going to take me, and I may, like I said, I may not come back. I have a beautiful son. He's 27, and he knows that, he remembers, and I used to role play with him, to taking drugs, and your friends are going to say this, and the other ones are going to be walking away. Those are your friends, the ones that walk away. But I didn't walk away. I stayed in that group because I wanted it. Like I said, I'm daring. I like to do everything, and sobriety too. I want to hit, and I want to get involved in central office. When I got sober, I used to serve coffee, I'd clean up, I'd secretary meetings. And then for a bit, I left AA, and then I followed church. And I remember getting into church, and I just started getting back into AA about 2 years ago when I lived in Arizona, because something was missing, And so now I'm fully involved. And when I was in Arizona, I started H&I, and I was getting really involved in the women's prison, and sharing my strength and my hope, my journey. And a lot of them were in there just for drugs and alcohol. And I'd have a good time, because I was carrying the message. And they would look at me, you? I'd say, yeah, yeah. I've just changed, and it's always in the book. And I hear Marilyn always saying it's always change. And it's always, I have to change my mind, too, because my mind can tell me a lot of stuff, and I could be in a meeting and my mind starts taking off, and I have to bring it back. And, a lot of times that's hard for me. It's, I struggle with that sometimes. And then I still get into service. And the other day, two girls called me up, and I picked them up at the bus stop. and we all came to a meeting, and we bought some sodas, and we just couldn't stop laughing. Just laughing instead of cussing at people and picking them apart and being judgmental. We were laughing, and sobriety's good. You that think that you can't do it, you can. Because I used to sit in the back and say, what the heck are you talking about? I couldn't relate to somebody that had a lot of time. I just could not. But somebody that had a week, I would hang out and say, how did you get a week? I can't even get a day. I couldn't even get a year because I'd go back out. And then when I got a year, they clapped. I didn't even want them to clap because I didn't feel I deserved it. And the ladies in there and the men, they held me and told me it's going to be okay. They loved me when I couldn't love myself. They invited me to barbecues, and I used to go to the dances, AA dances. I just really got involved. Every Friday night they had a big speaker meeting. I'd get involved. I used to go to the conventions when they had them in Monterey. And when I got to Arizona, they'd have retreats. They'd have 25 Al-Anon and 25 alcoholic women, and it was a campsite. And they'd have a campfire, and, I just learned to do all this sober. And then I realized, too, all the similarities, because I was always looking at the differences. And I started looking at the similarities. And we could sit around and talk about the stuff we did and laugh. I could laugh at some of the stuff that I did, how crazy I was. And I could hear other alcoholics, too, and laughing. And then you see people that don't know how to do that, and they're going, ooh, oh, my God. And, it's just, I have to tell you that it's fun, and it's taken me on a journey that I never thought possible. I remember being single, and I had goals. I set goals, so I bought my car. I bought me a house. Nobody helped me. I did it by myself because I set goals. I paid all my bills off, little by little. I did it. I did do it. I did it. I did it. I did it. And I finally got back with Bob because I stayed sober for 2 years. And I always said if it's meant to be, it's going to happen. We will get back together. And God directed us back together. He was living in San Luis and I was in Fresno. And we got back. And we were going to a lot of meetings together, then we had to separate because he had to work his program and I had to work mine because we got too enmeshed. And I was using him as my sponsor. And I couldn't do that. I just couldn't, And he said, oh, it's okay, Cynde, and oh, please. And so we got back together, and we got married, and Jeff right here was our best man. It's beautiful to be married to an alcoholic, recovering an alcoholic, because like they tell me, I'm always recovering. I've never recovered. I will always be recovering. And, I like it now because when I find things out about myself, bring it on. You know what I mean? Let me know what I'm doing so I can handle it better. I'm still learning, It's always a learning for me. I'm always having to change, adapt. And then I like to give back what I have. I have a lot of peace now, and I just love God. For me, my higher power is God. I'm always smiling, I'm always laughing. I work here at Foods Co., and everybody that's going through my line, I like to make them laugh. How's your day? Give them hugs instead of flipping them off and, giving them angry looks and stuff, and it's just beautiful. And I see a lot of people in the program that go over there, and they walk around, we'll give each other hugs, joke around. But, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere, and I'm available anytime somebody calls me. I'm there, and my husband's there. We invite people over. We just went to a barbecue with Victor and his wife, and it was just so nice to sit there, and it's so nice to be involved. So for you that are don't think you need to be here, it's like they told me, you don't. It's not a need, it's a want. I really wanted it. When I first came in, I didn't need it. But then I had to go through my journey that took me to where I was. And then I finally wanted it. And when I wanted it, it got better. I didn't have any DUIs in there, but I did go to jail. I didn't go to prison, but I was in prison in the drugs and the drinking. That had me in prison. But I freed myself because I surrendered. And I'm always surrendering. Surrender, surrender, surrender. And we didn't end up here because because we just didn't end up here because we wanted to. We're here for a reason, because we want to change our lives and we want to be sober. And we're always learning from, I'm always learning from the old timers, because the old timers have gone through and they have a lot of experience. And how did you do it? And how did you come about it? Because my experience, even though I didn't want to go through it, and even in my life now that I have bad times or struggles, I go through it and I don't drink. So my experiences, I can share with you that I was there and I didn't drink. And does it hurt sometimes? Yeah, but if I don't hurt and I don't have pain, how am I going to get to the other side? For me, it's growth. I'm happy today. I'm sober today, and I just have to tell you, I love all of you guys. And I didn't quite make it, but you know what? I got a friend right here, and he was on part of my journey too. So can he finish off for me? Jeff? There you go, Jeff.
Hey, thank you, Cynde.
My name is Jeff. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Jeff.
Thankful to be here, and there's some things that Cynde missed in her share here, but more be revealed. I remember having to pick Bobby up, off some couches, when he was heartbroken, and the thing he didn't do is he didn't drink and use no matter what, and that's what we're taught here. The strong don't survive here; the powerless do, and I'm powerless over people, places, things, and situations. There's nothing that a drink or hit a crack's going to do today to make my life or my kids or my woman's life any better today, man. It's just going to do the opposite. I've never seen anybody walk back in these rooms after they went out for maybe 1 day or 15 days or 2 or 3 years or 10 years or 12 years like I've seen come back in and tell me how well their life has gotten, how productive they've become. It's just one more time I hear it, that this time I'm going to get it. This time I'm done forever. My first sponsor taught me, you ever start talking about forever, you're going to be getting drunk real soon. You're sober today, Jeff. Sometimes it's 1 minute, one heartbeat, one teardrop, one cuss word at a time, man. We just don't drink and use no matter what. And I learned here, it's a program of suggestions. And I had a sponsor when I first got here that suggested some things that I didn't truly want to do, but I did them. And he helped me stay sober. And he taught me to share the program with other people. And that's how I had to learn how to condition my life, is to give to other people. We give it away to keep it. We hurt in order to grow. The strong don't survive here. The powerless do. We keep giving it away to keep it. And no matter what, we just don't drink, And I got back here. I got to AA and back-to-back DUI, suspended license, no insurance, and just a history of alcohol and substance abuse from high school to the Marine Corps to missing out on jobs to doing some other things. And one more time, God get me out of this one. I swear to God, I'll never do it again. Only to have that thought by about 5 o'clock that afternoon evaporate, and that stinking thinking they call it, come in and say, maybe just one. Maybe just one tonight, man. Maybe just two. And 2 became 3, and 3 became 10. And then the efforts come in, and Cynde shared about getting paid and spending their whole check. And I remember that. They talked about the similarities. And I get paid on Friday, spend my whole paycheck Friday night, wake up Saturday morning asking God to let there be one $100 bill and all these crumbled up ones. And I'd end up calling the girlfriend that I just cheated on all weekend and telling her how much I loved her on Monday because my car payment and rent was due. That's the type of pig I was when I got here, but I couldn't admit that. I was the last one to find out I was an alcoholic and a drug addict, like I was the last one to find out and admit the things I did the night before because I'm a blackout drinker. And it didn't matter how much I drank, it just mattered what it did to me at the end. And it was cunning, and it was baffling, and it was powerful. And it took me time after time that I'd have conversations with God telling him, you're not going to win on this one. I'm going to win. This alcohol right here, this substance, this liquid here is going to kick my ass tonight only to wake up the next day, wondering what happened last night one more time, man. And I remember the last time I drank, I was attending the ODAC club in Fresno, and it was about the size of this, little length here. And back then you could smoke in meetings. And what they had, the funny thing about AA back then is they had the smoking on this side and non-smoking on this side, and you were cramped in a little room. So when you walked out of there, you smelled like smoke, you know. And I remember I had probably about 30, 40 days, and this kid had a seizure. So I'm like, shit, you know, I'm new. I'm thinking, all right, we're done for the day. You know, I'm gonna get my court card signed, and I'm out of here. All they did is they dragged that kid back to the bathroom, stuck it back then. It would stick a spoon on his tongue, and they went on with the meeting. And I'm thinking, man, what a bunch of ruthless bastards here, man. And then the American Ambulance comes walking in with their gurney, and they're walking in, they're looking around at us like we're nuts, and they pick the kid up, take him out, and the meeting went on. You know, and I've learned here that no matter what, just like that kid, just like American Ambulance, just like those people in recovery, man, I got to get serious about my recovery. And I always thought that was a little bit too extreme. But see, then I got this thing called a sponsor. His name was Rotten Ron. And Rotten Ron used to tell me things like, the only time you miss a meeting, Jeff, is if you die on the way to one, man. And, you know, 24 and a half years later, I still kind of chuckle at that. You know, because he sits, it resonates in my head. Or, you know, you find a good enough excuse to go out and have a drink, you give me a call first. If it's good enough for both of us, we'll both go out and have a drink. Let's see if it was good enough for him, he'd have to call his sponsor. So I haven't found that excuse yet. I say yet because I can never ever tell you I'll never take another drink or smoke another hit of crack. I can't tell you that. I can tell you is one day at a time. When I come to meetings, when I work with others, I find out more and more about my alcoholism. That, you know, there's no cure here. Whether you want to call it manageable or one day at a time, you know. And like I said, when I got here, this was the most uncomfortable place for me to be in, was a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And today, you know, it's pretty much the most comfortable place for me to be in. The good, the bad, the indifferent. When I'm in the funk, out of the funk, things are going great. Things aren't going great. So it's time to hit a meeting. That was put in my head early. You know, there's no red carpet rolled out here when I got here. You know, and, you know, my sponsor, you know, this man, this individual, chose to go out and have a drink in year 4 of my sobriety. And it was his daughter's wedding. And him and a couple other guys that still claim their time were drinking Old Duels over there in the corner. And I'd asked him when I first came in, can we drink Old Duels? And he's like, nope. You go drink Old Duels, you might as well go have a drink. So just like the old commercial, he walks right up to me, and I had my girlfriend at the time, and puts the bottle right down in front of me and said, this one's for you. I said, F you, man, I'm not drinking it. He goes, no, I'm your sponsor. I'm telling you you can drink it. I'm not drinking that. You know? And what I learned is better you than me. You know? He taught me that. Better him than me to go out and have a drink that day. He chose to have a drink. He made a conscious effort. He made a conscious thought. He did it all consciously. Because I'm already drunk before I take that first drink. I already lied before I told that lie. I already smoked that hit of crack before I smoked it. You know, for me, there's no slips in recovery. There's no relapse in recovery. That's part of my self-will run riot. If I've been around for a while, if I've been here, you know, 90 days or something, I'm starting to get the idea of this program, and there's no excuse. And if I'm one of these ones that keep coming back in year after year, pour me, I just tell them to keep on drinking, man. There's a door, go have a drink. When you're ready, come on back in. Like they told me, like Rotten Ron used to tell me, there's a door, you know. But see, it's living life, man. Drinking was just a symptom of my problem, you know. When I got here, you know, I had a repossessed car. Someone was driving that then. I had an ex-girlfriend, someone was with her, you know. Someone was taking my place in my old job, but no one was going to take my place in AA, man. You know, and I remember I got this job, and, you know, I'm just kind of making it quick, and Ron said, you know, I couldn't have a checking account, because that's what I did, you know, when I was in AA. I wrote a couple bad checks and did some things that I shouldn't do, and so Ron, I went to work for Ron, and he said, go cash your check. Where's your bank? Where's your bank at? I said, he says, go cash it. I'd rather go to the store right here. He's like, no, why don't we just go to the check? Why don't we go to the bank? He said, I can't go to the bank. I go, oh, yes, we can. So we get in his car and takes me to the bank. And so we get close to the bank, so I start telling him, you know, why I can't go to this bank. He says, all right, we're going to stand here in line. This is what Alcoholics Anonymous is about right here, Jeff. We're going to stand here in line when you get up to that check. When you get up to that window, you're going to tell those people when you hand them the check that you're not privileged to have a checking account. You don't need to tell them why, but you just tell them you're not privileged to have a checking account. So I walked up there, gave the lady my check. I'm not privileged to have a checking account. You know, and all the things. She's looking at me, gets on the computer, types the name, and she starts shaking her head. Oh, yeah, got a few bounce checks here. The bank manager came over. Ron talked to her, and she said, we'll give you a savings account. So every Friday I'd get paid. I'd stand there in line. I'd hand them my check, and I'd tell them I'm not privileged to have a checking account before they get on the computer. And it became funny to them, but it became humiliating and taught me some things about being responsible. And I always wanted forgiveness when I got here, you know, but I could never forgive other people. I could never take responsibility for my actions, you know. And when it was time to start working, you know, the 8th and 9th step, you know, 1 year, about 7 years before I got to the program, a friend of mine told me to go get my car fixed. And I was kind of at the beginning of the end of my drinking and using, but, you know, I kept going because I didn't have a problem. I was lying. People were saying, man, you all right? You would never understand. That was my famous saying, you'd never understand. And my girlfriends at the time would be telling my family that I got an alcohol and drug problem, and I'd tell them they're full of shit. Boom, 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 and I'd deny everything, you know. And so I went and got my car fixed by a friend of mine's friend, and he said, the owner came out and said, why don't you go ahead and take the car for a test drive? I said, all right. Well, I took it for a test drive, and I never went back. And the bill was about $714.94. And so I got sober, and we started going over all the steps. And he says, one day I walked in, he says, I think it's time to go make some amends. So I thought I was going to cherry pick a couple. He says, no, you're going to go here. So I got on my bike because I couldn't drive. So that was the first suggestion I ever took in AA, was not to ride my bike, not to drive my car. Because Ron, they were DUI attorneys. So I thought I was going to manipulate the system by getting him as my sponsor. Well, he manipulated the shit out of me, and he kept me sober. You know, he taught me how to stay sober. And so I go pulling up to this auto repair shop. I go in there, and this was before computers and everything. The lady's at the front desk, and I said, you know, my name's such and such. I owe you some money. She's like in the computer again. She's like, are you sure you owe us money? And I said, yeah, I owe you some money. So I started telling her the story. And there's 3 other ladies in the room. All of a sudden the room got smaller. Her face turned bright red, and the other ladies are kind of looking at me with disgust, like the son of a bitch, you know. And I'm telling the story, and she's picking the phone up and saying, honey, can you, or whatever, Ron, can you please come in here? And she goes, hold on for that story. Hold on. Let my husband come in. And Ron was probably about 6'5". When he walked in, he seemed like about 7'10". And I'm just standing there, and I'm thinking, how do I get out of here, you know? And he goes, you recognize this guy? He's like, no. She goes, tell him. So I said, you know, my name's such and such. Mr. Carey sent me in there to get my car fixed about 7.5 years ago. He told me to take it for a test drive. All of a sudden his face turns bright red, and he's shaking his head. And I said, I owe you $714.94. I don't have any money. And he found that pretty interesting, shaking his head and smiling. I said, I have no money, but what I can do is I can clean your bays. I'll clean your uniforms. I'll clean your bathrooms every day till I work it off. And this man looked at me, and the room got a little bit more smaller, and he's just looking at me, and he says, you know what? I've been in business for over 30 years, and I've never, ever had anybody come in here and ask me to do what you've done. And he stuck his hand out. He said, you stay sober, we'll call it even. And I was like, no, but you don't understand. He's like, no, you don't understand. You stay sober, you know, we'll call it even. And so because people gave me breaks like that, when I was incapable for so many years of giving people breaks, it helped me out in my sobriety, man. It became, like Bob and I were talking about earlier, I came in here and became Superman. Then I went to become a simple man. And now I became a softer man during my sobriety. When I got here, there's night and day. When I first got a hold of this program, every other word was F you, you could suck this, I hate you people. I got kicked out of my home group for 6 months because of my foul language. They would tell Bob, don't bring that guy to our meetings. We don't want him here. And some people would ask me to come back, and some would ask me never come back to the meeting, man. But see, deep down inside, there was just something in me that I wanted to stay sober. Something clicked. Inside the VA hospital, when I was sitting there when I went to my rehab, looking in the mirror one day, something just clicked. I wanted to stay sober more than I wanted to get drunk. I wanted to be at peace more than I wanted to be hateful and ungrateful. And there's a statement in the book that I always look at that says, others judge me by my actions. Well, I've always judged myself by my intentions. My intentions of actions have always been two different things. And I've been blessed through this program with a lot of people, man. A lot of good people. People that showed me love where I didn't know about love, or reached out the hand when I didn't know about reaching out the hand, that have changed my life, man. Some are dead, some are still alive. I've learned here one day at a time, 1 minute, 1 heartbeat, 1 teardrop. We just don't use. We don't drink. We don't make up excuses. We don't do any of that shit. We just stay sober. You come in here and talk about it. If I want to have a drink tonight, my ass better stand up and say, I feel like having a drink today. My first sponsor told me. Because I guarantee you, Jeff would take the power away. But I appreciate it. Appreciate Cynde. Appreciate her story. And like I said, maybe Bob could finish up one day and tell you the real story on his side. Because there's a little difference there. But I love them both. I was in their wedding. Sometimes I forget that. You know, and they've just been true friends throughout my lifetime. And I remember Bob and I got disconnected for a while, and I'd call him up and I'd say, hey, what are you doing for the alcoholic that still suffers today? He didn't want to hear that shit for a while. He'd hang the phone up, or he'd get off the phone, you know, or send him a text, what are you doing today for the alcoholic? And I wouldn't hear from him, man. And I got worried that he was going to be out there drinking and using again, but he didn't. He just did his own little thing for a while, you know. He had to find himself and get whatever he had to do. I don't know what was going on in his mind. But that's how this program works, man. It's just one alcoholic helping another, whether it's through a text, page, a telephone call, a kind gesture. So I appreciate your time. Please let me share.